I remember waking up around 2:30 a.m. At first, I thought I heard footsteps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Like someone walking through dead leaves. I assumed it was a deer. But I started hearing it again. Closer. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Then finally, the footsteps stopped directly beneath our window. Hi Jenny, my name is Rachel, and this happened in October of 2021. My husband Brendan and I decided to take a weekend trip with our friend Marcus and his wife Danielle. We rented a cabin deep in the Appalachian mountain near the border between North Carolina and Tennessee. The cabin was beautiful. It sat alone on a hillside surrounded by dense forests. There were no nearby neighbors, no street lights, no cell service. That will be important later. Just trees, endless trees. The owner warned us that bears occasionally wanders through the area. What he says next seemed strange at the time, but it wasn't so strange at all. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Whatever you do, if you hear someone calling your name from the woods at night, do not answer." We laughed. He didn't. The first day was perfect. We grilled burgers, played cards, drank wine on the porch, watched the sunset disappear behind the mountains. Everything else felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. As the dark settled over the valley, the forest becomes unnaturally quiet. No birds, no crickets, nothing, just silent. Marcus noticed it at first. Why weren't there any noises? Nobody had an answer. Around midnight, Brendan and I went upstairs to sleep. The cabin had large windows overlooking the forest. I remember waking around 2 a.m. At first, I thought I heard footsteps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Like someone slowly walking through dead leaves. I assumed it was a deer. Then I heard it again. Closer. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I sat up in bed. The footsteps stopped directly beneath our window. Then everything went completely silent. I peeked through the curtains. What I saw made my stomach drop. A woman was standing in the clearing, perfectly still, staring directly at the cabin. She wore what looked like an old white nightgown. Her black hair hung over her face. I couldn't see her eyes. She wasn't moving, not even a little bit. I immediately woke Brendan. When he looked out the window, the woman was still there, standing motionless, watching. The sight was so unsettling that neither of us knew what to do. Finally, Brendan whispered, "Maybe she's lost." But even he didn't sound convinced. Nobody stands completely still in the middle of the Appalachian mountain at 2:30 in the morning. We decided to wake up Marcus and Danielle. When all four of us looked out the window, the woman remained exactly where she'd been. Same posture, same position, like a statue. Danielle suggested that we call the police. Then something happened. The woman tilted her head slowly, further than seemed humanly possible, until it almost rested against her shoulders. Then she smiled. Not a normal smile, a huge smile. Too wide, too unnatural. The kind of smile that makes every survival instinct inside your body begin to scream. Marcus immediately locked every door in the cabin, every window, every curtain. Nobody slept for the rest of the night. Around 4 a.m., we heard something on the roof. Heavy footsteps, walking slowly from one end of the roof to the next. The sound was impossible. No person could have ever climbed on top of that steep roof. No bear would walk that slow. It sounded deliberate, as if whatever was up there wanted us to know that it was there. The footsteps stopped directly above the living room. Then came the scratching. Long nails dragging across the woods. Danielle began crying. Brandon grabbed the fireplace poker. Marcus held a hunting knife. Nobody said a word. We just listened. The scratch continued for almost 25 minutes. Then suddenly it stopped. The silence felt worse because now, waiting for whatever was outside to make its next move. Around dawn, the sun finally began rising. We looked outside. The clearing was completely empty. There was no footprints, no sign that the woman had ever been there, nothing. We immediately packed all our stuff. None of us wanted to spend another second in that cabin. As we loaded our luggage into the truck, Marcus froze. He pointed towards the side of the cabin. There were marks carved into the wood. 5 deep scratches, perfectly parallel. Each one about 3 feet long. Too narrow to be bear claws, too deep to be fingernails. We drove straight to town. At a diner, we told the waitress what happened. The color drained from her face. She asked one question. Did she smile? Every hair on my body stood up. I nodded. The waitress looked towards the mountains, and then she said something else that I'll never forget. My grandma used to tell us stories about something that walked those woods. She lowered her voice. They say it watches the cabin. It waits for people to notice it. And if it calls your name, then she stops. What happened if she calls your name? Brennan asked. The waitress shook her head. I don't know. Then she whispered, nobody around here ever wanted to find out. Till this day, all 4 of us refused to vacation in the Appalachian anymore. The scratches on the cabin were photographed before we left. The owner claimed he'd never seen marks like that. A few months later, the cabin listing disappeared from the rental website. It's never been listed again. Now maybe there's a logical explanation for all of this. And maybe there's not. But one thing I know for certain, something stood outside cabin 17 that night. And whatever it was, it knew that we were watching. So, what do you guys think? I hope you enjoyed this Appalachian story time. If you have a story that you want to share, go on my website or send it to my email, allthingsjenny.official@gmail.com, so you can send your stories, and I'll love to hear them on here. Let me know what you think about the story. I will talk to you later. Bye. Love you guys.
Let's talk about the Appalachian Mountains, the place of fear and horror. The Appalachian Mountains is some of the oldest mountains on Earth. Stretching from Canada to the eastern United States, they are estimated to have originated hundreds of millions of years ago. At one point, the Appalachians may have even rivaled the modern Himalayas in height before immense ages of erosion reshaped them. Because of their age, isolation, and vast forests, they have accumulated a rich body of folklore, mysticism, and supernatural stories. The Appalachian Mountains are ancient Earth memory fields. They are planetary memory repositories, Earth consciousness archives, ancient grid structures, and natural frequency stabilizers. Because they are among the oldest exposed mountains on Earth, they become symbolic of primordial planetary memory. In this interpretation, the land remembers. They can even be classified as elder mountains. Unlike younger mountain systems associated with power and conquest, the Appalachians embody age, endurance, wisdom, silence, and hidden knowledge. They are often portrayed as elder mountains, not active rulers, observers, and witnesses. Now let's talk about the deep forest mystery. The living forest. The forest symbolizes collective unconsciousness, hidden realms, forgotten memory, liminal spaces. Many traditions describe the feeling that the mountains are somehow alive. In symbolic language, the forest becomes a threshold between worlds. Some folklore even talks about hidden people. I mean, like the movie Wrong Turn, The Hills Have Eyes, stuff like that. Mountain spirits, little people, forest beings, hidden communities. In this interpretation, we would view this as natural intelligences, possible representations of elemental consciousnesses, natural devas, land guardians, earth-based intelligence, and maybe even mutants and monsters. Whether literal or symbolic, they represent humanity's relationship with the living environment. Some people even say that there are dragon lines and earth currents running through the Appalachian Mountains. They function as stabilizing the planetary grids, carrying telluric currents, anchoring consciousness fields, and maintaining energetic balance. The ridge lines are viewed as pathways through which Earth energies circulate. But damn, why so much folklore and mythology around the Appalachian Mountains? That's because they contain some of the richest folklore in North America. Stories involve mysterious lights, hidden creatures, ghost roads, ancient spirits, strange sounds. Symbolically, this happens because old places accumulate stories. The older the landscape, the deeper the mythological layers become. The Appalachian Mountains are even possibly said to have underground, hidden chambers, ancient knowledge, sleeping powers beneath the surface, forgotten civilizations. The Appalachians are frequently associated with the Hidden Kingdom, not necessarily a literal underground city, but rather a concealed wisdom, forgotten ancestry, and lost memories. The mountain hides what must be rediscovered. Every sacred landscape has a shadow. The Appalachians' shadow includes it's isolated. Fear of the unknown when you go out there. Generational traumas have happened out there. Forgotten history is out there. Survival of your consciousness and of yourself takes place when you out there. The wilderness can nurture. It can also confront you. So be careful. So my interpretation is this. The Appalachian Mountains represent an ancient earth memory system. The forests are like a collective unconsciousness field. The mountain spirits are nature intelligences. The energy or dragon lines, that's the planetary energy currents. The hidden caves, they are concealed knowledge structures. The mist and the fog, these are veils between states of awareness as well as other worlds. Psychologically, the Appalachian Mountains symbolize ancient wisdom within the self, buried memories, ancestral inheritance, the journey into the unknown, discovering what has been forgotten. Unlike Atlantis, Babylon, or Egypt, which represent civilization, these mountains represent something older, the memory of the earth itself. So, they are not primarily a place of kings, temples, or empires, but these mountains are a place of listening, a place where the oldest stories are hidden beneath the trees, waiting to be remembered.
The person that sent me the story called it the little ghost girl in white. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our community about glitches in the matrix, dreams, aliens, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. A few years ago, I had an experience that I still can't explain. I woke up in the middle of the night with the overwhelming feeling that someone was staring at me. My room was completely dark. Double blackout curtains, no lights, nothing that should allow me to see anything. Yet somehow, I could clearly make out the figure of a little girl in a white dress standing near the corner of my bed. Why is it always a little girl in a white dress or a person in a white dress? Why is it always white dress, long black hair? I bet you this little girl had long black hair. Whoop, you see this? Whoop, whoop, whoop. The sight instantly scared me. Yeah. I reached over for the TV remote and I don't know if I accidentally pressed a button while grabbing it, but the TV suddenly turned on. The moment the room lit up, the little girl was gone. I'm usually pretty skeptical about things like that. If I see a jacket hanging on a chair or something out of the corner of my eye, I'll do a double take and realize what it is. This felt completely different. I knew I had seen something, but because I wasn't 100%, I kept it to myself and didn't tell anyone in my family. At the time, my sister had recently separated from her partner and was staying with us for a few days. A couple of days after my experience, we were on a family trip to the beach when I overheard my niece talking about seeing a little girl in the hallway near the half bathroom downstairs. My attention immediately shifted to what she was saying. She began describing the little girl that she had seen, and the description matched exactly what I had seen standing beside my bed, a little girl in a white dress. That was the moment that made my experience feel real. Before then, I had convinced myself that it could have been my imagination, but hearing my niece describe the same figure without knowing anything about what I had seen left me with a feeling I'll never forget. Yes, I love when people are there and see the same thing as us and corroborate our story. It makes us feel less crazy. What made it even stranger was what happened months later. My dad told me that he had also seen a little girl in the house. He described the same figure that my niece and I had seen. By that point, none of us could ignore how similar our experiences were. The strange part is that we had lived in that house for about 10 years and had never experienced anything like this before. There had never been any sightings, any strange occurrences, or anything that made us think that the house was haunted. Then, within a relatively short period of time, 3 different members of the family reported seeing this same little girl. To this day, I can't explain what happened. Maybe there was a rational explanation, or maybe there isn't, but the fact that 3 of us saw the same figure independently and at different times is something that has stayed with me ever since the end. Okay, first I want to go back and revisit what I said about like it's always like a white dress and black hair, because I actually just remember that I think I said this on live the other day, and somebody said, or a couple of people said, that maybe that's just the way that a lot of spirits manifest, because it's like the simplest thing they can do. It's just like a white dress and black hair is like very simple. So I'm wondering then if there's a lot of them that are manifesting in the same way because it's like the easiest for them, I guess, maybe energetically. Does that mean that the ones that can manifest and that look completely different, like look like themselves or whatever they looked like, do those spirits have more energy? Are they stronger? Is their energy stronger? And that's why they're able to manifest how they want. Also, I think it's very interesting that like all of a sudden you guys had like lived there for 10 years and then all of a sudden everybody was seeing this little girl, because you would want to say like, oh, you moved into this house, right? You start seeing this little girl, clearly that she's attached to the house or the land or something. But why, if that is true, why then was it like 10 years before anything happened and then it was like sightings of this little girl? I wonder if there's a reason that maybe spirits wait. Like maybe something happened, maybe there was something that triggered it, or maybe like a portal got opened or something, and she came through the portal in the house. I'm not really sure, because it seemed like she was just like passing through. If it was like didn't see anything for 10 years, then 3 of you saw her on different occasions in a short period of time, then didn't see her anymore. Maybe she was just like passing through. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments, and tell me also what you think the chill factor of this story was.
My husband always insisted on keeping this one painting of a woman. When Cindy and her husband moved in together, they had a few fights about personal space, chores, and some were even about decor. The main fight they had, though, was about this weird painting of a woman that the husband had brought in with him. So Cindy had asked, who is she? Maybe it's something sentimental. And he basically just said, I don't know, I got it at a rummage sale. It was an original painting, possibly oil, and it was of a young woman who was beautiful, standing in a dark room, and she was looking over her shoulder at the viewer. She had long blonde hair falling over her shoulders like waterfalls, and she was in a white cotton dress. There was something about her that was cute, but there was always something that was kind of haunting about it. She was illuminated brightly even though the room behind her was dark. The contrast and the pose kind of reminded her of the girl with the pearl earring, but it wasn't really that classy or beautiful. It was kind of just creepy, especially because her husband insisted on hanging it over the bed. She told him it's a beautiful painting, but it just doesn't fit with our modern decor. And he said, neither do your Funko Pops. She said, okay, but my things are small. This painting is enormous. The lady was nearly life-size. And he said, I don't care, we're keeping her where she is. He seemed to make it a big deal, so she dropped it. But multiple times, she would wake up in the middle of the night feeling like she was being watched. And she would look up at that painting, and it almost looked like the lady's eyes were looking down at her. So they lived with it for a little while, and eventually she started looking at the painting again. And she had asked her husband, has her hand always been like that? Because it looked like she had moved. Her left hand was now kind of open, like she was reaching for somebody behind her. And her husband Eric basically just says, yeah, it's always been like that. She could have sworn that it was never like that before, but she just chalked it up to the fact that she doesn't look at that painting super often because it makes her pretty uncomfortable. It was like really realistic, and every time she looked at it, she felt like she was making eye contact with a person. That lasted about 2 weeks, and then she begged Eric to move it. They argued back and forth for a while, but Eric was really insistent on keeping that painting exactly where he wanted it. Eventually, Cindy just says, I'll move my Funko Pops out if you move the painting. And he says, fine, I'll move it to somewhere else in the house. Honestly, this ended up being worse because Eric moved it to the stairs. So now every time she would go downstairs, there she was staring at her from the landing. At least in the bedroom, she would only have to see it right before she was going to bed, and oftentimes she was facing the opposite direction. She hit her breaking point a few days after that. For some reason, Cindy couldn't sleep, so she had tossed and turned for like a full hour until she decided to go downstairs and get herself a snack. She was on her way back up the stairs, and she had only turned on the hall bathroom light, so it was still pretty dark in the house. And there she was. She looked over at the painting, but because of the dark background and the way it melted into the shadows, she thought that woman was an actual person standing there. That's how realistic this painting was. She jumped about a foot in the air, and she would have fallen all the way down the stairs if she hadn't caught herself on the banister. So the next morning at breakfast, Cindy asked Eric, can we please get rid of that painting? Because last night it scared me so bad. And he kind of just laughs at her a little bit. It was like, you got scared of a painting? Like, it's not even a real person. Like, but she was trying to explain to him, like, no, there is something about this painting that just seems so realistic. Mostly because he was tired of hearing her, he said, okay, for now, I will move her into my office. That way you don't have to see her. And for a while after that, that was a great solution. But then she noticed something. Eric started spending a lot of time in his office, like neglecting their relationship, the household chores, and his job. And she was thinking, like, there's no way that this has to be tied to this painting. And she was like, what, is he like staring at it for like hours at end? Except that's exactly what she caught him doing. One night, he didn't come downstairs to eat dinner, so she called out to him, and he did not reply. So she called again, and again he didn't reply. So she went upstairs to his office, and she found him sitting there staring at the painting. Computer closed, no paperwork at all on his desk, so he wasn't working. He was just turned in his swivel chair directly towards the painting, just staring at it. So he turns around and looks at her and basically says, oh, like, sorry, I was just about to come downstairs. I just sent in my brief and they're really happy with it. And so he gets up, slips right past her, and heads down the stairs. And she's standing there thinking, like, did he really just finish working? Like, did he actually send in the brief? But I don't know. She decided not to bring it up because she had her own deadline to work on, because she had an article that was due that she hadn't even started, and it was due at the end of the week. Then on Friday, she overheard something that she was not supposed to. So I guess his boss had called him, and he's telling him, like, don't worry, I'll have it in to you by the end of the day. But his boss says that was due on Wednesday. And then Eric says, I'm sorry, my wife fell down the stairs, so I've been preoccupied with her. So she barges into his office and basically just says, why are you lying about me falling down the stairs? And he apologizes, saying, I'm sorry, like, I needed an excuse because I'm late behind my deadline on this brief. And she said, you told me that you sent in that brief 2 days ago. So what's the truth? She then says, are you even working in here, or are you just spending all day staring at her? And then he says, you're jealous of her. And so now Cindy is freaking out. She was like, absolutely not. What did you just say to me? And then he apologizes, saying, I'm so sorry, like, this painting is just beautiful, and it's more beautiful than she ever was. Then they both froze, and Cindy looks at him and says, you're telling me this is a painting of somebody you know? And you can tell that he's starting to panic at this point, and he says, no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. So Cindy takes a step forward and basically says, who is in the painting, Eric? And he denies it again and again. And so she's like, you need to tell me right now who is in this painting. And he just shakes his head. That night, she couldn't sleep, and the only thing that she could think to do was to wait until Eric went to bed. She crept into his office, and she took a picture of the painting, just so that way she could do a reverse image search on it. It took a few minutes for the website to load, but thankfully it did, and she was able to upload the image. She was expecting maybe like 1 or 2 results, but dozens of results came up for the exact same thing. Search continues for a missing Franklin art student, Anaya Kelsey. Her heart dropped because the exact girl that was pictured on the phone is the exact same one that's in the painting. She went missing when she was hiking with her boyfriend. I guess they had come upon a bear and the two got separated. About a mile away from where the sighting took place, they found Anaya's backpack, but they had no trace of her. Pictured in the article was the exact painting that was hanging in Eric's office. I guess Anaya was a 3rd-year art student, and she had just finished a self-portrait right before she went missing. None of these articles mention the boyfriend's name, but it had to be Eric. As she's scrolling through numerous articles, suddenly she starts hearing footsteps coming down the hallway, so she hides. She ends up hiding under his desk, and he comes into the room, and he calls out to her. And she's thinking, like, why didn't I just say that I heard a noise or that I needed a pen or something? Because if he finds me hiding, he's gonna know. At this point, she's thinking maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, or maybe he's not a murderer. But then suddenly, Eric finds her, and he says, "There you are." So Cindy looks up and basically says, "I'm sorry, I was looking for a pen." And Eric says, "We both know that's not the truth. You know, don't you?" So she decides that she's going to make a break for it. But the second she goes to run, Eric grabs her wrists, and he basically says, "You don't understand." And so Cindy says, "What did you do to her?" And he basically just says, "So you think I'm a murderer? You don't understand." She tries to get out of it by saying, "No, I don't think you're a murderer, just what happened to her?" But you could clearly see in Eric's eyes that he didn't believe her. He says, "You should have just left it all alone, and I'm sorry you had to find out this way." And immediately he raises one of his fists to go and hit Cindy. Then there's a crash behind them. Enough so that Eric turns around and Cindy's actually able to break free, and she runs out the door. But what had fallen was the picture of Anaya. She was always a fast runner, and she was already all the way down the stairs by the time Eric was only about halfway. She runs out the front door and she's screaming. Thankfully, by the time Eric got to her, the neighbors were already flicking on their porch lights, and one of them even called 911. The police arrested Eric for assault, and when they searched the house, they actually found a few of his possessions. One of them was a box, and it had gold earrings, and they were the same exact earrings that Anaya wore on the hike that day. But one thing Cindy's never been able to get out of her mind was, how did Anaya's painting fall off the wall that day? Of course there was an explanation. I guess one of the screws that was hanging up the painting had been installed into pure drywall, and the weight of the painting ended up weighing down on it, and it fell. But sometimes, Cindy thinks that Anaya might be looking out for her, and that she was protecting her that night from experiencing the same fate she did. So now the painting hangs in the foyer in Cindy's home. And every now and then, when she looks at it, it looks like Anaya's smiling. Thank you guys for listening to today's story on Explore Paranormal. As always, I'm Jason. Let me know in the comments if you guys like this story. Throw a heart on the video if you did, and give me a follow because I tell stories like this all the time. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Former 911 operator, I don't tell you stories to scare you, but to prepare you. Here's a DM I received from a truck driver. He told me that after this, he never drove the same route again. He said he was driving through a lonely stretch of the highway in the middle of the night. No other cars, no gas stations nearby, nothing but miles and miles of empty road. He says around 2 or 2:30, it looked like a woman was standing on the shoulder. And it looked like she was wearing a white dress. At first he thought maybe she had a car that broke down, but as he got closer, something felt really off. She wasn't waving, she wasn't moving, she was just standing there, watching the road. He started to slow down, he was trying to decide if he should stop or not. And he glanced at his side mirror, and she was gone. Not walking away, not hiding from what he could tell. Gone. And the road was flat for miles in every single direction. No trees, no buildings, nowhere that she could truly disappear. He tried to shake it off and he told me that he kept driving. And about 20 minutes later, he saw her again. Standing on the side of the road, same dress, just watching. He told me that he locked his doors, he hit the gas, and he just kept driving. He's never been so scared in his life. To this day, he tells me that he tells people this story and he swears that he saw that same woman twice on the highway and he never drove that route again. He said maybe he was delusional, but he swears he saw her. I don't know what he saw that night. If I saw the same person twice in the middle of nowhere past 2 a.m., I'd be questioning my life choices too. He never drove that route again, he told me. This one kept me up last night.
Your husband is ex-military. He doesn't believe in ghosts and none of that nonsense until he has his own experience. Tonight's ghost story is called The Honeymoon Maid, and it's sent to us again by Claire, so thank you so much for sending this, Claire. Now, Claire says, my husband is ex-military and served 17 years in the army. She says he's about as shockable as cement. On our honeymoon, we stayed at a hotel in Lanzarote, and one night he got up to use the loo, and I suddenly heard him shouting before running out of the bathroom. She says, so naturally, I just assumed that he trapped his todger in the toilet seat and was about to spend the rest of the holiday complaining about it. I'm a nurse. Sympathy is not our strongest skill when it comes to our family. Instead, he started turning on every single light in the room and opening the front door to look into the hallway. It was 3 a.m. I was not impressed. He then told me when he turned around to head back to bed, he saw a maid standing in the bathroom doorway, staring directly at him. He shouted in surprise. She simply vanished. There was no footsteps, no doorway opening, nothing like that. We slept with the lights on for the rest of the holiday. Oh, we love it when a skeptic becomes a believer, don't we? Oh, makes our week. If you've had a similar story like this, let me know. Send me a message. You can go on my profile, send me a message that way, or you can email me, thedarklingchronicles25@gmail.com. Either way, I cannot wait to hear from you. I'll catch you in the next one.
I have a creepy video to show you. This video was taken in June of 2009 in Indonesia. In the beginning, it's innocent enough showing two boys sitting on a bed playing guitar, but then after a while, the person recording starts to freak out because something has entered the room, something that wasn't there at first. And before we watch, please excuse the quality, it's a very old video.
Astagfirullah, itu tuyul itu sebelah jim, tuyul. Itu belakang itu dari gigiran sia. Tergiran si paku sen tenempo. Di belakang itu tuyul. Di gigiran sia tuyul. Gigiran sia tuyul itu. Di nyamperin sia itu.
Many people who have come across this video believe that this was actually some sort of goblin that is native to Indonesia. It's kind of similar to a duende in Hispanic folklore, being as they're both malicious and they like to steal and mess with people. Other people have also pointed out that this creature looks like a rake, and I definitely see that too. It's also important to note that in the translated version of this video, the person behind the camera is actually freaking out the entire time because he seems to be the only person who can see this creature. The boys playing guitar have no idea it's there, and they actually think that the cameraman is just messing with them because they literally cannot see him at all, which I think makes the video that much more terrifying. As always, let me know your thoughts on this horrifying video.
This is one of those situations that I pray I never find myself in, because Sarah's husband Marcus has been avoiding her and leaving the room every single time that she walks in. But last night, she found out why. Marcus and her have been married for 4 years, but they've been together for 7, so they know each other really well. And she wants to stress, Marcus is not a cruel man by any means. He's actually one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. He literally cries at commercials, he remembers every single name of every person he's ever met, and he even turned the car around one time because he thought he was being rude to a gas station attendant. So what she's about to tell us is completely unlike him. It started in February. She came home from work one night and Marcus was in the kitchen making dinner, which was completely normal. So she dropped her bag in the hallway and she announced that she was home. But before she could even round the corner going into the kitchen, he was immediately turning off the stove and walking into the living room. But again, she didn't think anything of this. She figured, oh, maybe he forgot something in there and he just didn't hear her. So she poured herself a glass of water and went into the living room to go and find him. But he wasn't there. So she called out to him and she heard his voice coming from upstairs. So she called upstairs and basically was like, is everything okay? And he said, yeah, everything's fine. I just came to get something. Then he came downstairs and they ate dinner completely normal. Conversation was completely normal and he was acting completely normal. She completely forgot about it by the time they went to bed. But then it kept happening. Not every day at first. It was just once or twice a week. She'd enter the room and he would immediately leave. Not in like a dramatic way, just in a very casual way. He always needed something. He forgot his phone, or he was going to start a load of laundry, or he forgot something. There was always a reason, and he was always calm about it. After about 3 weeks of this happening, she decided that she was going to ask him directly if something was wrong, or if she had done something to upset him. And honestly, he was confused by her asking. He said, of course not. I love you and there's nothing wrong. You might just be like imagining it. And she wanted to believe him. She really did. After that, she really started to pay attention. She noticed that every single time she would enter the room, within 30 seconds, he would leave. Again, it was never abrupt. It was always casual. But he would leave. And by that point, she was certain something was going on and that it wasn't random. So at this point, she started testing it. She would go into the bathroom and suddenly he needed to go get water. So she'd follow him into the kitchen. And then all of a sudden he needs something in the garage. So she'd go out to the garage. Then, all of a sudden, there's a phone call that he needs to take privately. She never once managed to be in the same room as her husband for more than a few minutes. And the strangest thing is that he didn't seem upset or cold or mean in any way. Anytime they were in the same space, he would act very warm. He would kiss her cheek, or he would caress her hand, make nice conversation. He was acting like himself in every way, except for the leaving. After about 6 weeks in, she woke up one night in the middle of the night, and Marcus was not in bed. But this wasn't super unusual, because sometimes if he couldn't sleep, he would just go out into the living room. So she waited and waited and waited, and about 20 minutes went by, but he never came back to bed. So she decided that she was going to go check on him. So she opened her bedroom door, and she found him just standing there, in the hallway, facing the bedroom door. And suddenly, it's like he snapped back into reality. He started to smile at her, but not like a creepy smile, like a completely normal smile. The one that she had known for 7 years. Then he just said, "Sorry, I couldn't sleep. Go back to bed. I'll be up in a minute." So she did. She laid back down, and after a few minutes, he came back into the room, laid down, and went back to sleep without a word. When she woke up in the morning, she was making breakfast, and she was kind of just like convincing herself that maybe she had dreamed the entire thing. She didn't bring it up. Something told her not to. The leaving got even worse in March. There'd be times she would enter the room and he would abruptly stand up and try and leave. There was one time that he even knocked over a glass of water, and immediately he apologized and cleaned it up. But she noticed that his hands were shaking. Her sleeping got really bad because she would just lie awake at night next to her husband, trying to figure out what she had done or what he knew that she didn't. 2 weeks ago, she came home early from work because her meeting got canceled, so she was home by noon. It was a Friday, and Marcus works from home on Fridays, so she knew that he would be there. She walked into the house, and it was quiet. So she called out to him. She knew that he was home because his car was in the driveway, but she didn't get any response. So she started walking around the house. Every single room was quiet. And that's when she heard it. A small noise coming from the guest bedroom at the end of the hall. They never used this bedroom, so she thought it was odd, but it sounded like a humming. Marcus was sitting there in the corner of the room with his knees pulled up to his chest. It was dark. All of the curtains were shut. The strangest thing was, when she had opened the door, for just half a second, Marcus's face did something that she's never seen it do before. It was like every single muscle in his face went limp. His eyes went really wide, and his mouth fell open. But then a second later, it was normal Marcus again. He had just asked her why she was home early from work. So she had just told him that her meeting got canceled and like, what is he doing? And all he said was that he was taking a break from the screens. So she said okay and went back downstairs. And now she's been sitting at the kitchen table for a long time. So that night she decided that she was going to ask him again if everything was fine or if he was like scared of something. All he did was grab her hands and say, "You are the love of my life and everything is fine." But his hands were ice cold. Last night, she woke up at 3 a.m. again, and Marcus wasn't in bed. But this time, she decided that she wasn't going to wait. She got up immediately and opened up her bedroom door. And that's when she saw him. He was standing in the hallway, in the same spot that he was standing before, with the same stillness. But this time, he wasn't alone. She doesn't even know how to describe what she saw without sounding crazy. It was tall, and it was dark, and it was standing right next to him. They were both facing away from her, and she stared at them for a full minute, and neither of them moved. And then slowly, Marcus turned his head, as if he could feel his wife behind him. And like it cost him something, like he strained to get the words out, he said, "Please go back to bed." So she went back to bed, and now she's been sitting there since 3 a.m. It's currently 7 o'clock, and she has not heard her husband once. She's not sure if she should open the bedroom door, and she said she'll update when she can. Thank you guys for listening to today's story on Explore Paranormal. As always, I'm Jason. Let me know in the comments if you guys like this story. Throw a heart on it if you did, just so we can push it out to some other people. And give me a follow if you like stories like this, because I tell them all the time. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
In my opinion and my experience, the most common paranormal experience isn't seeing a ghost. Now, when people think of paranormal experiences, they usually picture apparitions, shadow figures, or objects flying across the room. Now, have those things happened? Yes, but that's not actually what most people will report. And who am I to talk about this? Well, I've been investigating the paranormal for a very long time. I think I'm almost at over 20 years at this point. It doesn't make me like better or smarter than anybody else. This is just the data that I've collected over the years that, from talking to people. I used to do residential cases, meaning that people invited me to their homes to assess their hauntings. I do not do that anymore. I've been around the block a couple times to collect enough data to make this, conclusion. So the most common experience is much more simpler. It's actually feeling like you're being watched, sensing a presence or hearing a sound that you can't explain, or suddenly feeling uneasy for no obvious reason. Here's what's fascinating. Sometimes those experiences may have completely natural, normal explanations. So there's things like infrasound, electromagnetic fields, poor lighting, suggestion, uneven floorboards, or even the way our brains process unfamiliar environments. That can all contribute to those feelings. But that doesn't make the experience any less real. And as paranormal researchers and investigators, our job isn't necessarily to prove a haunting. It's to understand what happened. And then sometimes when we do that, we do find a natural explanation. And then sometimes we don't. And it's the mysteries that we can't explain that keeps us asking questions, which is why I love the paranormal so much. And to me, it's curiosity should always come before conclusions. So when I go into haunted places or I talk to people, I interview people, or I'm investigating, researching, I always go in with this motto. Curiosity should always come before conclusions.
I think that an alien tried to communicate with me yesterday. This is actually not clickbait, and I'm actually to be fair, I'm actually quite freaked out. So it happened late yesterday afternoon. I just got back from Glasgow. I was doing some very exciting ADR, guys. I cannot wait to finally tell you what I filmed and what show I'm in. And I was on my couch, absolutely fine. And the third trailer for Disclosure Day came up, which, by the way, so excited about. So excited. If anybody has any contacts, if that would be my first movie premiere, I would be absolutely buzzing about it. We could get to the Disclosure Day movie premiere in London, Leicester Square. I'm here. I'm ready for it. Please, some make my dreams come true as an aspiring actress, please. So anyway, was watching the final trailer, so excited about this movie, and then, as you do on TikTok sometimes, I should have been doing work, but I ended up going down a bit of a rabbit hole with the whole aliens and the encounters and what's going on. I went down a pretty severe rabbit hole, as you do. I've always been interested in all of that kind of stuff, but then suddenly it like hit me. Like, it was like I had been hit by a bus. I was just like absolutely exhausted. Now, I am not somebody who naps, and I just absolutely crashed. Not for long, maybe like 10 minutes or so. And I shot up to the most craziest ringing in my ear. Insane ringing. Like, I'm there like with my finger. Finally it went. I go back onto my phone. I swipe onto the next TikTok. Next video is a woman talking about her experience with an alien. And she goes, yeah, I was out and I suddenly just like felt like I had been hit by a bus. I had to go and sleep in somebody's car, and then woke up to the most intense ringing noise in her ear. The only difference is that she then actually saw something in the distance. I didn't see anything. I'm getting spooked. I'm like looking around me right now. What is going on? Tell me that that is not freaky. And then last night when I was on the phone to Lewis because he was out, my phone goes, your phone call is being recorded. Nah.
Y'all ever buy something from an estate sale or like a thrift store, and the second that you bring it into your house, the atmosphere completely shifts? Because a follower emailed me her story about an antique ring that she bought, and honestly, after reading this, I'm about to start interrogating every antique dealer before I buy anything ever again. And hey Toxins, it's spooky scary story time, and welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee, and not everything that I serve is gonna be safe. So this girl said she was just browsing in the estate sale like a few months ago, and she found this vintage silver band. And it wasn't anything expensive. It was just like a pretty old cheap ring. She liked the vibe of it, so she bought it and she took it home and she put it on her finger. So the first couple of days, she said it was completely normal. It was no weird vibes. It was nothing. But on day 3, she woke up and she noticed that she had like tiny little thin scratches around the base of her finger where she was wearing the ring. Now, she said it wasn't any deep scratches. It was more like irritated marks that look way too specific to ignore. Now, obviously, she completely ignored it. Because who immediately wakes up and blame their jewelry? Yeah. She figured she just scratched herself while she was asleep, or she had like a mild reaction to the old metal. So, she washed her hands and she kept wearing it. But then she said the dream started. She said every single night she kept having that same hyper realistic dream. She said it wasn't like a nightmare that she was having. It was just like an older woman standing in the corner of her bedroom watching her sleep. The woman wouldn't even move and she wouldn't even talk. She was just there. The fuck? Anyway, staring at her with this like heavy, intense expression day after day. It was the exact same woman standing in the exact same spot until night 5. She said in her dream, the woman finally took a step forward, looked her right in the face, and repeated a very specific name over and over and over again until she woke up sweating with the name literally echoing in her head, y'all. And at this point, she was completely creeped out by the whole situation, so she decided to take the ring to like a local estate jeweler to get the metal appraised and see if it was even worth anything. Now, the jeweler, he was an older guy who had been working with the antique pieces for like decades. She said she took the ring off and she set it on the glass counter, and he picked it up and he looked at it. He turned it over once and then he froze. Yeah, that would have sent me right there. And immediately he looked up at her and he asked, "Where exactly did you get this?" She told him that it was just from like a random estate sale down the road. And he didn't say anything else. He just flipped the band over, pointed his light directly into like the curve of the metals, and he slid it back across the counter. Deep inside, the hidden part of the band, she said it was so tiny that you would have missed it if you wasn't looking. There was like a faint hand inscription in it. She said her stomach immediately dropped because the name carved into that silver was the exact name that the woman in her dream had repeating the night before. Fuck no. Now look, I'm not saying that the ring was haunted or doing anything crazy, but I am saying that objects, they carry heavy memories from the people who wore them for decades. And when you put something that belongs to a complete stranger directly against your skin, you may not be bringing just your jewelry home. You may be bringing home more than that. Needless to say, she left that ring at that shop and she didn't even care about getting her money back. I wouldn't have either. Hell no. Now tell me, would you have kept that ring after seeing that name? Let me know in the comments. I'm serving it black today, and I want y'all to drink from a clean source. And I love y'all. Oh, by the way, if you got some spooky, scary story times, here's my email right here. You know what it's in. And I love y'all. See you in the next video.
I think an entire town could disappear in the time it takes to walk up a hill, because that's what my papa swore happened to him. This spooky scary storytime submission was sent in by Samantha, and it's an Appalachian Elder Stories, which, if you've been following this channel, is arguably one of the best subjects that we ever cover. But Samantha says that her papa was not the type of man to chase ghost stories or make things up just for attention. He was born in 1949 near Hazard, Kentucky, and he was born dirt poor on a farm with 12 brothers and sisters, and they all worked sun up to sundown in some of the deepest woods that Appalachia has to offer. For as long as Samantha can remember, her papa repeated the rules about Appalachia that we all know by now, which are if you hear your name being called, no, you didn't. If you think you saw something, look away and don't whistle after dark. But the one that he repeated more than any other rule was this land is old and it likes its privacy. Samantha says she never understood where those rules came from until the evening that she was sitting in the living room with Papa and his brother Hank, and they were playing a true crime documentary on the TV that mentioned Kentucky and Appalachia. And casual as mentioning the weather, Papa looked over at his brother Hank and he said, "You remember that time we saw the town that disappeared?" Uncle Hank nodded and said, "Yeah, I can't believe Mom and Dad never took us seriously." And immediately Samantha paused the TV and she was like, "What are y'all talking about?" He was like, "What do you mean an entire town disappeared?" And Papa tried to brush it off and he was like, "Oh, it was a long time ago." But Hank was insistent that they tell her this story. He's like, "She ought to hear it. We're not going to be around forever and it's important that she knows this in case she's ever down that way." He points toward the window and he said, "The woods is alive and it needs to be respected. Tell her." And that immediately got Samantha's attention. And Papa was like, all right, fine, I'll tell her. So he said that back in the 1960s, he was 16 years old. And one afternoon after finishing the farm chores a little bit early, he, Hank, and their younger brother, HC, decided to take one of their dad's old pickup trucks to go exploring. As they got past the scattered houses in the area, there was really nothing but endless woods, but they drove in the area near Buckeye Creek, taking smaller and smaller roads until the pavement disappeared and they were taking dirt roads that wound up the mountain. And they weren't looking for trouble, they were just looking for a new fishing spot. They just wanted a place of their own to hang out somewhere away from the farm. And so Papa was driving, Hank was sitting in the passenger seat, and the sun was setting. And as they're driving, they come up to what seems to be a man carrying a flickering lantern. And he's sort of walking along the edge of the road, but then he turns and he walks into the trees. And thinking that he must be a local and that he probably knew of a good fishing spot nearby, they parked the truck and followed him into the woods. Papa and Hank got out while HC stayed back in the truck. And as they entered the woods, they could clearly see an old man walking ahead of them through the trees carrying his lantern. He had white hair and a long white beard, and they called out behind him, but he didn't answer. He just kept walking. And eventually they saw him disappear down an embankment and over the crest of a small hill. And so the boys followed, and when they got to the edge of the hill, they saw an entire town at the bottom. It didn't look like a modern town. It looked like an old one with houses that belonged 75 years earlier, even back then. Several homes had lanterns that seemed to be glowing through the windows, smoke drifted up from the chimneys, and people appeared to be moving around inside the houses. They spotted the old man at the bottom of the hill, still carrying his lantern, and he walked straight into one of these houses. And the whole place just seemed untouched by modern society. And so immediately, Papa looks at Hank and he's like, "We got to go get HC and show him this place." The whole walk back to the truck, they talked about how strange this little town was, tucked into the mountains, and how out of place the houses looked with the glowing lanterns. So they got back to the truck, they got HC, and they headed back, but when they got back, there was nothing there except for flat land and what appeared to be foundations from houses that once stood there in the past. HC, being one of the youngest children in the family, was immediately suspicious of Papa and Hank and thought they were pulling a prank on him because he always got picked on as one of the youngest children in the family. But after seeing how insistent that Papa and Hank were that they had just left a town, the boys decided to search the nearby hillside but found nothing. They searched for about an hour, checking the hillside and nearby clearings, convinced that they had just walked back to the wrong spot. They found nothing, and the town had simply vanished, and now they were thoroughly spooked because the sun had set and it was completely dark outside with no other light besides the moon, and Hank finally said we should just head back. As they neared the truck, they noticed something that made their blood run cold, and they picked up the pace because on the other side of the truck, in the woods on the other side of the road, was the flicker of a lantern. When they reached the truck and started climbing inside, they heard a voice, and they looked in the woods, and standing just beyond the tree line was the old man still holding his lantern and watching them, and he said, "You folks ain't need to be in these parts." Hank said that he actually remembered grabbing Papa's arm because there was no way this man had followed them. They hadn't noticed any movement, hadn't seen the flicker of a lantern, and there was no way that he would have been able to cross the road and get over there that fast. But Papa, being a stubborn teenager, just responded, "We can walk wherever we want, old man." And according to both Hank and Papa, the man just stared at them, shook his head, and said, "You boys are going to regret not respecting the land." And then he stepped behind a large tree. Papa immediately followed him and stepped behind the tree, but the man was completely gone, and so was his lantern. There was no movement, and by then the woods had gone completely silent. The boys piled in the truck and got out of there fast, and the road home cut through miles and miles of dark forest with trees pressing against both sides of the narrow road. And that's when things got worse. Because 4 or 5 times along the dark road home, they saw the same man standing just beyond the tree line with his lantern lighting up his old weathered face. Every single time it was the same old man. And there was no possible way this man could move this quickly through the mountains at a speed that could outpace their truck. There he was, again and again and again. And Papa finally had enough and he floored the truck. But the moment they reached pavement in a more populated area, the sightings stopped. And of course, when they got home, they told their parents and their other siblings, and nobody believed them. Dad thought they made the entire thing up and accused them of drinking, while their mother only said, "This land isn't ours and we weren't here first." Nobody really listened or believed them. But according to Papa, the strangest part came afterward, because according to him, the old man never completely went away. For years, when he was working on the family property after dark, he would occasionally catch sight of the old man standing just in the tree line, still with his lantern, just watching him. According to Papa, every time he yelled at him or tried to get closer, the man would step behind a tree or a building or a landmark and disappear completely. He'd just be gone, like he was never there at all. And maybe there's an explanation. Maybe the boys got turned around in the woods, or maybe they'd imagined things. But Papa and Hank believed that what they saw was real, and they never stopped teaching the kids that the land is old and likes its privacy. And Samantha says that she has actually a few more stories from Papa. One is called The Sentinel of St. Holler, and the other is The Scritch Scratch of Blue Diamond. She said maybe she'll share those one day. Believe them or don't. But if you are ever walking around Appalachia late at night, and you see a lantern flickering where no one should be, you should probably keep walking. Samantha said it was fine if I used her real name. She'll be seeing the comments. And if you have a spooky, scary story time that you think no one would believe, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
Okay, pay attention. If you are doing energy clearings and removing entities and attachments, but they keep coming back, either from your clients or from yourself, you need to understand a few of these things. So the first thing is that it may not be your client that's being attacked. It may be their higher self. So many practitioners go straight for what is obvious and in front of them instead of zooming out and looking at the higher picture. This is one of the reasons it's so fucking important to have a very strong psychic connection yourself so that you are able to get to the bottom of exactly what's happening. So if the higher self is being attacked, it doesn't matter how many times you remove it from the person, because it's their higher self under siege, right? So you need to go to their higher self, see what is attacking them, see how many aspects of their higher self, aspects of their soul are being attacked by the same thing in different dimensions. Then you need to zoom out even further and see what is controlling those things in the first place and what keeps anchoring it back in. Is it contracts? Is it horcruxes? Is it spell work that spans across different timelines, right? You need to go in deep with this shit. The other thing that can be happening is you might keep removing and clearing attachments from yourself and they just keep coming back. It's because you have a landing pad somewhere. So there is an implant or something in you that is basically acting as a landing pad that keeps calling this shit in. You can also have this where there is a vortex or a negative portal in your body that again keeps attracting negative stuff. So it doesn't matter how much of the negative stuff removes, you're not going to the root. It's part of the reason why it's so important, not just to have a very clear, strong psychic connection yourself, but to keep asking questions. Take yourself out of the fucking session. Don't assume that you know how to clear something. I don't care if you've been doing this shit for 20 years. You need to ask questions to get to the bottom of things to clear them safely. Otherwise, if you do half a clearing, you might end up actually leaving your client worse off than you found them because you've opened shit up, pissed a load of stuff off, and then basically said, have at it, take your money, off you go. So a couple of those things. I hope that they will help someone out there. If you want some proper training and frameworks in this type of healing, as well as some help with developing your own psychic channel, psychic abilities, and all the stuff around psychic safety, go and check out my academy. I literally have an online university for this, along with a community. We range from beginners all the way up to advanced psychic channels. We have different groups and tiers for each. Just comment academy below and I'll send you the info.
So listen to me.
Okay, because everyone is asking for a story time, here it is. So my dad and I were at Ashantilly Gardens. We hiked up all the way, went to the ruins. I was taking photos and videos the entire time because I thought it was such a pretty area, obviously. As we were getting in there, I keep on trying to turn up the flash on my camera, and it wasn't really working. I wasn't just holding up my phone and looking with my bare eyes, which I could see better with. I was looking through my phone camera so I could see if it was actually recording. So as I'm looking through my phone, my dad was looking at me when he was talking and saying that the room was pretty dirty. And I'm looking through my phone camera and I'm trying to brighten the screen so I can capture up the whole room on the video. And as I'm doing that, that's when the outline of whatever the heck that was, that's when I can see it. Mind you, my phone brightness also is not all the way up, so I'm literally squinting looking at my phone like this, and then I see it. And also, that was my natural and real reaction, the way that I was calm and collected and was just like, Dad. The last thing that I wanted to do was escalate the situation by freaking out and potentially putting my dad and I in more danger. So I said, Dad, and I immediately just started to steadily walk away. My dad was still standing there holding up his flashlight, trying to figure out whatever the heck it was before he said, Bella, run, because to him, it looked like it was moving. So we start booking it out of there. We get to the bottom, there's a woman who was hiking up, and I was like, hey, stop. I show her the video. She literally did not care. Like, she had no reaction. She was just like, oh, that's a little bizarre. We get in the car. My dad tells me then that it looked like it was moving, so we call the police. I tell them, hey, I'm not sure if it's a person in there, if it's a drawing or something. What if they have a weapon? What if they're planning to hurt someone? So the police go and check it out. They said they were shining a flashlight at it for like 15-20 minutes before they could realize that it wasn't real, because apparently to them it looked detailed. And they also said that in a way it did really look like it was moving, just because of the way your camera is reflecting off of the wet walls. It was definitely very scary. I'm very glad that it didn't end up being an actual person or some freaky demon thing. It was Ashantilly Gardens, also known as the Marble Mansion. As far as I've read, nobody died there, but apparently it is known for being kind of scary and having some ghost stories. But that is the story time of what happened.
Okay, so the story gets weirder. I posted about this book, Robert Burns' book that I found, that had like somebody's whole, if I pass away, these are all my bank accounts and these are all my wishes in the book. So I haven't had any joy, so I will be driving to Fishguard. However, it's a bit of a ghost story now, because when I was showing my sister the book, after I did the video that I've just replied to, and we both basically heard a massive bang downstairs, and we kind of put it down to, okay, we've, nothing too serious, weird noises happen. If you follow my videos, weird stuff happens. So then the other night I did a video where basically I'd been moving the cabin round, and the Robert Burns book is in the cabin. Well, it was in the cabin at that time, and as I was helping my niece move her things to the main house, the papers from the Robert Burns book had fallen out, so I put them back in. And then later that night I went up to the cabin, I could smell tobacco smoke, and sent somebody in the cabin, and Kutch was also growling in the corner. So Trevor, one of the guys that's also on TikTok, who's a really cool guy, musician, he messaged me and he said, when you can smell tobacco, it usually means the spirit's trying to communicate something. So I thanked him, and and he said if it happened again with the video that he sent me, you have to ask, like, what do they want? So anyway, I kind of woke up in the morning and my niece was in the kitchen, and I thought I'll take the book and show my niece, because for the last week or so I've been having really strange occurrences of seeing somebody walk down my sister's stairs, seeing somebody go past the window, seeing a strange white thing behind me 3 o'clock in the morning in the kitchen, the tobacco smell, all these other things since I found this book. So I showed my niece the book, and then I go and she's trying to work it out, and she said, maybe put it on a different social media community page, which I might do later on today when I got some time. Anyway, I go and see my sister, and she says, I don't know what you brought into the house, she said, but I went down at 4 o'clock in the morning. This is the same night I was smelling the tobacco smoke at 12 o'clock. She said, and the kitchen lights flickered 3 times, but really, really like blink, stop, blink, stop, and blink. She said, you need to get rid of those books. I said, yeah, but it could be, Vernon, the person that had the books called Vernon, is trying to get his family to know that they need these books. It's really important information. He's written so much stuff down. When someone passes, it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? But he's written basically a blueprint of everything that he owns. So I said, maybe it's, he's trying to communicate. So anyway, bearing in mind now my sister has had a weird experience, and my niece has now seen the book, gone through it in great detail, touched it, and everything else. A day goes by, and the next morning I say to my niece, did you sleep well? She said, no. She said, I had a really weird experience. I was in my room, I heard a huge bang, and so I woke up, but nothing had been disturbed in my room. I was like, oh, okay. She said, so then I went back to sleep and I was woken by a huge bang and a picture fell off the wall. So, yeah, I think I really need to find the family of Vernon L. Thomas that was married to Jane, because it's not only me being affected by things now, it's my sister and my niece. What I don't want to do is just sort of throw the books away into a recycling area or take it to a charity shop, because if somebody sort of had nefarious intent, you know, they could access a lot of this person's personal things. So I will say again, you know, if there's anyone that knows a Vernon R. Thomas that may have passed away and a Jane Thomas that maybe were sort of based in Milford Haven, Fishguard area in West Wales, do private message me, because I need to get this book to the relatives of this person, because it's not only me affected now, it's also my sister and my niece, but my sister's pretty freaked out by it all, which surprises me because her YouTube history is all about serial killers and strange videos about people reviewing fish fingers and different types of sausages. I actually said to her the other day, I said, you know, if somebody goes missing that's annoyed you, I said, I imagine you'd probably be the best serial killer in the world, because the amount of YouTube videos she has of all these different documentaries, she's fascinated by it all. So it's quite funny that she's more freaked out than me about the weird bumps that are going in the night at her house at the moment. So she's bagged the Robert Burns book up and asked me to take it back to the cabin. So as long as it doesn't turn into, like, you know, that whole is it the Annabelle doll, haunted dolls situation, I'm okay. But when I get some time, like a really free day, I think I might have to drive to Fishguard, unless anybody has any leads for me. Because I know Welsh communities, especially where my sister Mary lives up in Bridgend, everyone knows everybody, don't they? And they're all quite close. Somebody must know Vernon R. Thomas, but I'm now getting messages from beyond the grave, and it's freaking my sister out, and my niece was very scared as well. So yeah, I'm kind of laughing because, like, my sister's like nearly 6 foot. I think she might be 6 foot. I'm 5'5", and she's kind of like, I always joke, I always say that, you know, she's like the son my parents never had. She's a proper lad. It's like guys love her because she knows everything about cars, and she's like a proper, I don't know, do you call it bloke's bloke? Like a woman being a bloke's bloke, but she's really feminine looking. So it just cracks me up that she's more freaked out than I am about these whole strange things that are happening in the house at the moment. Gosh, I have a real propensity to waffle. But yeah, if anyone could help solve this mystery, I'd really like to give the books back. Because, yeah, it seems to me as though the strange occurrences in my sister's house are now ramping up to my sister and niece, and they're freaked out. Whereas I thought maybe it was just me having some sort of strange situations. It turns out that it's now a family thing. And now when I move the book again to the cabin, something else will probably happen. I took it to the main house, because actually when I took it to the main house, all the tobacco smell stopped in the cabin, and all the stuff happened in my sister's house. Oh, so yeah, I'd really like not to have the book within the next week. Give it to the relatives, because it's clear to me that I'm now getting a lot of paranormal activity linked to the book, which sounds bizarre until you experience it, and then you're like, oh, okay, this book really needs to get to the family. But yeah, I'll just leave this video here, and yeah, fingers crossed somebody can just track down the family for me and I can just hand this book over. Because, pictures falling off the walls, doors slamming, tobacco smells, apparitions in the house, all since I found this book is, it's interesting, but it's not ideal.